So anyways, the revenues that are only raising at 1%, and that's hopeful that they go up 1%, therefore create a gap. So all other things absent under this model, we're still at a budgetary level dealing with about $35,000 a year that we gotta cover. Now, and that's assuming you go to the max of 2% tax levy increase, and it's assuming your total expenditures only increase at 2%. And when you get outside those parameters, those gaps become more challenging. So, but over time, there are gaps, and this illustrates that there's still work to be done every year to control expenses, to find other sources of revenue, if you want to achieve the goals of the plan.
How would we know if we wanted to achieve a 0%, how much more we have to raise in other ways without running those numbers? I'm just asking. Because this just shows you what you need to raise without a 2% tax increase.
That's a fair question. And that could be, let me just flip through that. I'm thinking it's in here, just, that'll be your change in tax levy number year over year. If your tax levy doesn't change, that's the additional amount of money. That schedule I can certainly run for you. I mean, but in the context of this schedule, I don't think that would project a realistic approach. But I can certainly run that schedule for you. But basically, it's 2% of 11 million, so you're talking $230,000 a year. Give or take, round numbers, plus the 35, so $250,000 a year you have to cut from the budget to maintain. If you have 2% increase in expenditures, that's how that math would work.
I think that's just important so we can tell the residents, like, to understand, if you want to keep the tax levy at 0%, we would need to find a way to cut $250,000. You know, I just think that's important to know.
No, that's like, again, that is a number that can be done outside of the schedule. It's pretty straightforward. But of course, as we know, not everything always goes up exactly 2%. We hope that in average, that's been a good number. And again, if inflation kicks in the next 3 or 4 years, and we have to make that 3%, you know, that presents a different forecast outlook. Please keep in mind that going across the bottom of the schedule on page 8, as we solve our budget challenges for 2019, one way or another, that resets the next year, because this is a running number. So again, you know, this is really reflects a little compounding, but the cumulative effect of $35,000, $36,000 a year, 1 year, over a 2-year period, it doubles, 3-year triples, and it just presents as additive. Not that we should imply that we're going to have to find $188,000 of savings in 2023, because we would never have gotten it. We always had to come up with a balanced budget one way or another.
So if you wanted 0%, it would be 35 plus the 250, and then each year you could do that, so you don't have to run the numbers.
It would be, well, if we're at $11,418,000, it'd be $114,000 for 1%, $228,000 for 2%, plus the 35, so about $260,000. If that's a good number for you, then I'm glad we're able to resolve that. Page 9. A little narrative here. Basically, we break our capital projects out on the next page. Small capital, funded by annual revenue resources. Large capital, funded primarily by bond proceeds. Page 10. Here's the numbers. And it just shows the flow over time, cash in, cash out. Ultimately, this is a 2% increase in capital That's what the very first line does on the top. Bond proceeds are borrowed, that goes into debt service number, that's our large capital. So that is not gonna have a direct year-to-year impact because debt service funding is projected to be stabilized at 5%. So, and in the long run, debt service does drop off under the current projects in the plan, and I'm sure we'll work through some things in a couple of weeks to look at different ways to look at that. So, page 11. This is my new page. Again, we really want to make sure we communicate what we're doing year to year and how the information on this plan can change from the project schedule perspective. You know, we've always just kind of discussed these things during the presentation, but we really felt it was important to put them into writing so that anybody reading the plan could at least incorporate that into their basic understanding. They didn't have to listen to the presentation, and just better describes the core metrics of how the plan was developed, and updated annually. Page 12 and 13 are the basic project schedule. 14 through 30 are the narratives. That'll be the focus, I think, of our next meeting. I will have some supplemental schedules in bigger print, and I will have one alternative document to look on that's different than this. So I will make some bigger copies for you. But if you wouldn't mind going to page 31.
Mark,
Again,
at the second meeting, are we going to have a chance, is that when we would identify the costs that we do not see in this chart that we know are coming?
yep, Saturday.
Okay.
So page 31 gets into some more narrative about our utilities, because in addition to our tax levy impact, the village also operates parking, water, and sewer utilities, which can also have an impact on our residents. Page 32 is really the runout on the parking utility under status quo at the time that this was prepared. And again, it just shows some general trends. If things are in general status quo, expenses here is really the thing that goes up 2%. There's other expenses on the bottom of the expense section. And it just shows how that's going to trend. We do have a line right above the red line is where we have rate increases included above. On the parking utility, they're all zeros. We don't feel there's a need to increase rates under current modeling. But you see that's going to be different in the water and sewer utilities. I'll talk about that in a second. Again, ending net equity, which is above the red line, that's your total, is not cash. And I put cash at the bottom of the page based on my estimates of where cash is likely to be, because there's some debt service expense still in the parking utility. Plus, there's underlying assets that are in equity that are not cash, but we know that cash is an important number to keep track of. Page 33, and it gets into our water utility. In 2017, the water utility had a rate increase of approximately 14%, as approved by the Public Service Commission. Preliminary projections are also showing that there may be a need for an increase of approximately 15% again in 2021. With additional increases in subsequent years in order for the utility to remain self-sufficient. This is a little more discussion than on page 34 that we've had in the past, because it seems that, I just want to be clear about how this schedule works. I have a whole separate subset of schedules for water and sewer utility that I track. Rates, projected consumptions, costs, metrics for MSD, Milwaukee Water, debt service needs, capital needs, small project needs. But those basically feed into my metric up here. So if the village wants to continue to preserve its general obligation borrowing capacity as stated in its guiding policy guidelines for the municipal utility should be in a strong enough fiscal position to be able to issue its own revenue bonds. Again, that is our goal. Whether you issue revenue bonds or not, the utility should be in a strong enough fiscal position to be able to do so if the board shows.
Is that just, can you outline, is that in 2028 where it looks like, when is that?
I've got some comments on that. Just give me a second. The measures of self-sufficiency are essential to achieving these goals, and that is operating revenues need to cover 125% of debt service costs, and cash reserves need to be at least 25% of operating expenses. So those are my two basic metrics that I'm modeling this on. Now, please also keep in mind that on this schedule, we're looking at the water utility should become reasonably close to achieving these goals by 2023.
It doesn't, they don't equal cash position and.
Reasonably close. Reasonably
It's half.
close.
Oh.
So I've got some hidden cells, so 25% of operating revenues is about a little over $400,000, and 125% of debt service cost is covered. Cash reserves, 25% of operating expenses. So again, the background computation of operating expenses, debt service is not on the schedule. This is why I'm making a note that about 2023, given these increases, now this includes the anticipated increase in debt service needs of the utility that result from the implementation of this plan. So I mean, we're programming infrastructure here. These have embedded costs, and I make every effort to approximate what that's going to mean to try to stabilize this in a long-term perspective and manage the rates as efficiently as possible. Page 35 then kind of goes through the same metrics for sewer. Currently, we're projecting to need a 10% rate increase in 2020 in advance of the major sewer work on the Southeast Sewer Project in order to facilitate issuing revenue bonds for the first phases of this project in 2022. It's all presumption on the schedule here. Again, additional increases will also be likely and necessary once these projects get underway. Schedule on page 36 is an example. The projected rate increases that may be necessary in order to meet these infrastructure improvements and cost increases over time. The sewer utility is already in a strong enough fiscal position to be able to issue its own revenue bonds for major infrastructure projects. One of the additional benefits of having sufficient cash reserves, as well as being able to cover debt service by 125% from operating revenues, is that extra 25% coverage generates additional cash reserves. This can also enable the utility to potentially self-fund the required bond reserves, which would otherwise have to be added to the amount needed to be borrowed when issuing revenue bonds. So that's a cash savings for when you're issuing revenue bonds. It also allows the utility to self-fund smaller capital improvement projects, that you don't have to just keep adding small projects onto the bondable schedule. We can cash fund some more smaller capital projects for sewer lining, manhole maintenance, and we just have to bond them for the larger projects.
Mark, the obvious is that our cash position changes. Can you just say something about that?
Could you restate the question? What are you saying?
When you're explaining it in terms, what's the basis here at the bottom, estimated cash position? We do have we have enough reserves to over the 25% operating, but in years 2025 and out, we do not. So what does that mean? Sorry, I just, if you're
No, that's a
going
good
over, I don't
question.
know.
That's a good question.
Because you no longer have that bonding ability.
At this point, I think I plugged my rates because I'm not sure of how many additional self-funded bond reserves I need to cover. So I just left it at 910. That number might change, which is why they're grayed out. But yes, that's a great observation, and certainly true. So, and again, we'll update this.
I just want you to explain what that means, would have to happen. What does the 910 change mean?
It's not a change, it's the amount of funds that need to be kept in reserves to secure the revenue bond that we anticipate borrowing.
So it might have to go up. Okay, I'll ask later.
We may need to borrow for those funds depending on the ultimate scope, or raise rates to cover those if we want to cash fund them above and beyond what's in the schedule. Now again, I'm making some assumptions on what I think other expenses are going to be. Generally, utility expenses raise faster than operating